The sun dipped low over the rugged peaks, painting jagged cliffs in shades of blood orange and deep violet. Every step crunched on loose gravel, sending tiny avalanches tumbling down the mountainside. Alina's boots ached, her muscles screamed in protest, and yet she kept moving. Ahead, her team followed, trusting her to guide them safely through the treacherous terrain. It had been over 60 hours since their last meal. Supplies were running dangerously low, and the cold mountain air gnawed at their energy. Hunger clawed at their bellies, but retreat was not an option. The mission depended on every member of the team reaching the summit before nightfall, and Alina, their leader, had silently vowed she would not let anyone falter on her watch. Her pack felt heavier than usual, the straps cutting into her shoulders, and every ounce of fatigue threatened to drag her down. Yet her mind was razor-sharp, scanning the horizon for safe paths, unstable ledges, and hidden dangers. She was not only carrying her own weight, but also the responsibility of her team's survival. "Steady," she said, her voice calm yet firm, echoing slightly across the narrow mountain pass. "Keep your spacing. Watch your footing. We move as one." Behind her, the team struggled to match her pace. Their faces were pale, sweat and dust streaked across their skin, and their eyes held a mixture of determination and desperation. One soldier stumbled, nearly toppling down the slope, but Alina reached back, steadying them with a firm grip. "We can't slow down," she whispered under her breath, though her throat burned with thirst. "Not now." As they ascended, the wind grew sharper, whipping through the crevices and biting at exposed skin. The team pressed closer together, sharing body heat and silent encouragement. Every crack of loose stone underfoot sounded like a gunshot. Every gust of wind threatened to throw them off balance. Yet Alina's presence was steady, a beacon of focus and endurance in the chaos. Hours passed. The daylight waned, shadows lengthening across the rocky terrain. Hunger gnawed at the edges of their minds, and exhaustion became a palpable force pressing down on their shoulders. Some whispered complaints under their breath, others tried to hide their trembling hands. Alina ignored the pangs in her own stomach, knowing that if she faltered, the entire team would falter. The path narrowed dangerously near a cliff's edge. Loose gravel and unseen pitfalls made every step a gamble. Alina led with deliberate care, testing every hold, ensuring that no one stepped on unstable ground. Her boots slipped once, and she cursed under her breath, adjusting her balance quickly. Behind her, soldiers mirrored her cautious movements, learning from her composure. Night began to fall, and with it, the temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the edges of rocks, the wind carrying the sharp scent of cold and stone. They had to find shelter, but there was nothing but jagged cliffs and sheer drops. Alina made a decision. Movement was safer than staying put. The team followed, silently trusting her judgment. By the time they reached a small ledge barely large enough for them to huddle together, Alina's own body screamed for relief. Hunger, fatigue, and the chill pressed against every nerve. She thought of resting, of giving in, but the team needed her strength, her determination, her unwavering focus. She took stock of their progress, checking each soldier for signs of frostbite or exhaustion. One by one, she offered encouragement, adjusting packs, sharing water sparingly, and even taking some weight from the soldiers' loads. All the while, she ignored her own gnawing hunger, her own sore muscles, her own trembling hands. Alina was the glue holding them together. Every command she gave was precise, every movement calculated to preserve life, conserve energy, and maintain morale. The team may have been physically broken, but under her guidance, their spirits remained intact. As the first stars appeared overhead, Alina allowed herself a brief moment to look up. The mountains stretched endlessly, formidable and unyielding, yet they had moved through more than half the pass. There was no time for triumph, only survival, only the relentless march forward. The night was merciless. Wind howled through the mountain passes, carrying the bitter scent of ice and stone. Alina's team huddled close, sharing what little warmth they could generate, while their leader remained vigilant, scanning the terrain for hidden dangers. Sleep was impossible, hunger was relentless, but the mission demanded unbroken focus. Alina's stomach protested violently, yet she refused to eat the last scraps of ration. knowing her soldiers needed it more than she did. Her body was weakening, muscles stiffening, but her mind was sharper than ever. Every decision now carried life or death consequences. Hours passed in silence, punctuated by the occasional shifting of a pack or the soft hiss of wind over rock. Alina remained alert, listening for the subtle sounds of avalanche, rock slide, or enemy movement. Every rustle in the distance triggered her instincts, and she instinctively adjusted the team's formation, moving them further into cover, deeper into the shadows. One soldier whispered, "I can't keep going. I'm too weak." Alina's eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. "You can. You must. Lean on me on the team. We move together or we fail together. I won't let you fall." They pressed on, navigating narrow ledges, sheer drops, and treacherous rock faces. The path was unforgiving. One misstep would send them tumbling hundreds of feet below, yet Alina never hesitated, never faltered. She measured each step, tested each hold, and ensured the soldiers behind her mirrored her movements. By dawn, the first light revealed a jagged ridge still miles from their objective. Hunger and fatigue were now companions, persistent and oppressive. Soldiers stumbled, packs slipping from exhausted hands. Alina adjusted each pack, redistributed weight, and encouraged her team with unwavering determination. Her own lips were cracked and bleeding, but she spoke as though the pain was nothing. They reached a precarious outcrop overlooking a deep valley. The terrain ahead was even more dangerous, but they had no choice. Alina assessed the route carefully, plotting a line through the sharp rocks and icy scree. "We move fast and steady," she commanded. "Every step counts. Every moment matters." As they descended, one soldier slipped, catching on the edge of a rock. Alina reacted instantly, grabbing their arm and pulling them to safety. Sweat mingled with blood on her hands, yet she smiled faintly, offering a nod of reassurance. "We're still moving," she said. "That's what matters." The march continued, each step a battle against exhaustion, hunger, and the unforgiving mountain. Alina's leadership was unshakable, every command precise, every movement deliberate. She carried not only her own pack, but occasionally redistributed weight from the weaker soldiers, absorbing their burdens as though they were her own. By late afternoon, they reached a plateau where they could rest briefly. Alina allowed only a few minutes, ensuring the team ate what little remained, drank cautiously, and remained warm. She refused any food herself, insisting her energy be preserved for guiding them further. Hunger clawed at her, but the mission demanded sacrifice above all else. Night fell again, colder than before. Alina led her team along narrow ridges, under cliffs that seemed impossibly steep, and across frozen streams that threatened to freeze or sweep them away. The team relied entirely on her knowledge, her judgment, and her strength. Without her, survival was impossible. Finally, as stars blanketed the sky, they reached the last stretch of the pass. Alina looked around at her team, exhausted, pale, battered, but alive. She allowed herself a fleeting smile, knowing that her leadership, her refusal to give in to hunger or fatigue, had kept them moving, kept them together, kept them alive. And yet, even in that moment of relief, she knew the march was not over. Mountains waited, challenges loomed, and the path to safety stretched onward. But Alina's resolve was unbreakable. She had gone without food for 3 days, endured every hardship, and carried her team forward. Through darkness, hunger, and fatigue, she had proven that courage and leadership were not just about strategy. They were about sacrifice, endurance, and the unyielding determination to protect those under your command, no matter the cost. The first light of dawn brought no relief, only the cold bite of altitude and the realization that the worst was yet to come. Alina's team had survived the initial descent, but the climb ahead was merciless. The mountains loomed taller than ever, jagged spires of rock piercing the sky. Every step would demand precision, every breath a battle against the thinning air. Alina adjusted the straps of her pack and signaled the team to halt. She scanned the cliff face ahead, plotting a route that minimized risk yet allowed speed. Her stomach growled faintly, a painful reminder of the past 3 days, but she ignored it. She could not falter now. "Listen carefully," she whispered, her voice firm but calm. "The ledges are loose. Move one at a time. Eyes on the person in front of you. Trust your footing, the team obeyed. Each soldier's eyes mirrored exhaustion, fear, and determination. The silence of the mountain seemed to amplify their every movement. The scraping of boots, the snap of ice, the shift of gravel. One misstep could send them plunging into the abyss. Alina led by example, testing every foothold with deliberate care. Her boots slipped once, sending a shiver through her legs, but she adjusted instantly and pressed on. Behind her, the team mirrored her movements, leaning on her judgment as if their lives depended on it, because they did. The climb was slow, agonizingly slow. Each meter gained felt like a victory, yet the summit seemed impossibly distant. Alina's muscles burned, her hands blistered from gripping the rope, but she refused to let exhaustion dominate her. She distributed water sparingly, making sure weaker soldiers had enough, often sacrificing her own share. One soldier, barely able to keep pace, stumbled and nearly fell. Alina's reflexes were immediate. She grabbed the soldier's pack and steadied them, offering a reassuring nod. "We move together. No one falls behind." The wind picked up, rattling loose stones and sending sharp pellets of ice across their faces. Visibility dropped, and shadows grew deeper, making every step more dangerous. Alina's eyes swept constantly, noting every unstable rock, every potential slip, every loose edge. Hours passed. Hunger gnawed at every member of the team, but fatigue was the real enemy. Limbs trembled, fingers lost sensation, yet Alina pressed onward. Her voice became a lifeline, guiding, encouraging, correcting. Every word mattered, every command a potential difference between life and death. Finally, they reached a precarious ledge halfway up the cliff. Alina called a brief halt. They huddled together, sharing warmth in the freezing wind, breathing shallowly and taking stock. Her body was screaming for food, for rest, for relief, but she gave nothing to herself. The team needed her more. "Water," she said, rationing drops to each soldier. "Eat what you can. Keep your strength." She took none, letting her hunger go unacknowledged. Every moment spent tending to herself was a moment lost for her team. The sun dipped lower, turning the mountain into a silhouette of jagged black against a burning sky. The shadows created illusions, rocks appearing as holes, cliffs blending into the darkness. Every misstep could be fatal. Alina adjusted ropes, checked harnesses, and guided the soldiers with precise commands. One by one, they scaled the final section of the cliff face. Hands cramped, muscles screaming, hearts racing. Alina's leadership was unyielding. She climbed the last meters first, ensuring the ledge above was secure. Then, slowly, she helped each soldier reach safety. By nightfall, they had reached a narrow plateau. Temporary safety, but only temporary. The mountains were unforgiving, the mission far from complete. Alina allowed herself a brief moment to catch her breath, checking every soldier for injuries. There were minor cuts, bruises, frostbite forming on some fingers, but all alive. Her own body begged for sustenance, but she remained steadfast. She distributed what little rations remained to the soldiers, insisting they eat first. Hunger gnawed relentlessly, but her resolve was unbreakable. Her sacrifice had kept her team alive. The night was a silent predator. Darkness swallowed the plateau, and the wind carried an eerie whistle across the cliffs. Alina's team huddled together, exhaustion etched into every face. Some slept fitfully, leaning against rocks, while others simply sat in silence, conserving energy for the hours ahead. Alina remained alert, her senses stretched taut. Every shadow, every movement, every sound was a potential threat. The mountains were not just a physical challenge, they hid dangers beyond imagination, sudden rock slides, predators, or even human threats. She quietly checked each soldier's harness, pack and footwear. Their minor injuries were treated with precision, every bandage applied with care. The team's survival depended on her vigilance, and she did not falter. Suddenly, a faint sound, like shifting gravel, reached her ears. Alina froze, signaling silence. Her heart raced, but her mind remained sharp. She scanned the dark, listening, calculating. The sound repeated, closer now, subtle but unmistakable. "Enemy movement," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The team tensed. They were not expecting hostiles, but in these mountains, threats were everywhere. Alina quickly assessed the situation. They were exposed on the plateau, with no natural cover. Retreat was risky, but staying put was equally dangerous. She formulated a plan, her mind racing despite hunger and exhaustion. "Form a perimeter," she ordered softly but firmly. Eyes sharp. "Weapons ready. We move on my command." Every soldier obeyed instinctively. Alina positioned them strategically, maximizing coverage and minimizing exposure. Then she crept forward, scouting the source of the sound. Her hands were steady, her mind focused despite 3 days without food. Hunger, exhaustion, and fatigue were distant echoes compared to the immediate threat. From the shadows, a figure emerged. Another team, perhaps, or scavengers drawn by the same treacherous terrain. Alina assessed quickly. Unarmed civilians, lost and frightened. Relief washed over her briefly, but the danger reminded her that vigilance was never optional. Returning to her team, she shared a few words of reassurance, ensuring they remained calm yet alert. The team's morale was fragile. One wrong move, one lapse in leadership, and disaster could strike. Alina's presence was the anchor. The hours dragged on. Frost formed on their clothing, and the wind bit through even the thickest layers. Alina encouraged her soldiers to move periodically, keeping blood circulating, muscles warmed, and minds alert. She herself ate nothing, feeling hunger like a constant ache, but refusing to succumb. By dawn, the hidden threat had passed. Alina led the team forward, slowly descending into a safer zone where supplies and shelter might be found. Her leadership was unyielding, her sacrifice unwavering. Even in the face of hunger, fatigue, and hidden dangers, she remained the unshakable guide her team depended on. By mid-morning, dark clouds rolled over the peaks, signaling an approaching storm. The wind had already begun to howl, carrying with it fine needles of ice that stung exposed skin. Alina's team had made progress, but the mountains had not finished testing them. She paused at a narrow ridge, surveying the path ahead. Slopes slick with melting snow, hidden crevices, and loose rocks made every step a potential death sentence. Yet beyond the ridge, the terrain promised access to a plateau where supplies might be cached and shelter could be secured. "Everyone close," she called, her voice firm, cutting through the rising wind. "Move together." One slip and it's over. The team obeyed, stepping cautiously. Alina led, her hands gripping the rope anchored to a weathered pine. Her boots slipped on the icy ground once, but reflexes honed over years of military training kept her upright. Behind her, soldiers mirrored her movements, eyes wide with tension, breaths shallow and uneven. The storm arrived in full force before they reached the plateau. Snow whipped horizontally, visibility dropped to mere meters, and the wind threatened to knock them off balance. The cold was a relentless predator, biting through layers of clothing, numbing fingers, toes, and ears. Alina signaled the team to halt and find temporary cover behind a rocky outcrop. She quickly assessed each soldier, lips blue, teeth chattering, frostbite starting to set in. Time was short. She distributed emergency thermal blankets while giving concise motivational instructions. "Keep moving if you can," she urged. "Stay close. Don't panic. We're almost there." Her own body protested violently. Hunger clawed at her stomach. Fatigue weighed down every limb, and every muscle screamed. Yet she continued without a thought for herself. Every soldier's survival depended on her focus, and she could not allow weakness to show. Hours passed. The storm showed no mercy, and progress slowed to a crawl. Soldiers slipped, fell, and struggled to catch their footing. Each misstep required immediate intervention. Alina's voice became the lifeline that kept them oriented and moving. "Left. Watch the ledge! Steady now!" She shouted over the roar of wind, extending a hand to steady a trembling soldier. Night fell, but the storm showed no mercy. Lightning illuminated jagged cliffs and swirling snow, casting eerie shadows. Each flash revealed the dangers surrounding them: sheer drops, unstable ice, and hidden crevices. Finally, after a grueling ascent that seemed endless, Alina spotted the plateau. Relief flickered in her eyes, but she maintained composure. The plateau was small but sufficient to regroup, rest, and treat frostbite injuries. She guided the team across the last stretch, helping the weakest soldiers with hands and ropes. No one was left behind. When all were finally on stable ground, she allowed herself a single moment to lean against a rock, gasping for air. Hunger gnawed at her relentlessly, but there was no time to dwell on it. The storm still raged and night offered new dangers. The plateau was exposed, offering minimal protection from the storm. Alina quickly scanned the area and spotted a narrow cave entrance partially hidden behind rocks. It wasn't ideal, but it was the best available shelter. "Move quietly," she instructed. "Inside, quickly!" The soldiers obeyed, crawling into the cave, mud and snow clinging to their uniforms. Inside, the wind's fury was muted, though the cold still seeped through the stone. Alina guided everyone to huddle together, sharing body heat, while she quickly assessed the situation. One soldier had frostbite on fingers and toes. Another showed early signs of hypothermia. Alina's medical training kicked in. She stripped off layers from her own pack to create additional insulation, distributed remaining rations to the most at-risk members, and applied first aid with precision. "Hunger makes it worse," she said quietly. "Keep drinking water. Keep moving fingers and toes as much as you can." Her own stomach ached, but she forced it down, reminding herself that every calorie she gave to her soldiers meant one step closer to survival for them all. She ate nothing. The team's morale hinged on her composure, and weakness would spread like wildfire. The storm raged outside, turning the plateau into a world of white chaos. Snow whipped past the cave entrance, rattling loose stones. Alina stationed 2 soldiers near the entrance to keep watch for avalanches or falling debris, rotating them every 30 minutes. She sat silently, listening to the wind and snow, monitoring every sound, every shift in rock or ice. The cave was their sanctuary, but it was fragile. A single rock slide could crush them. Hours passed. The team slept fitfully, some shivering despite blankets, others awake, eyes wide with fear. Alina remained alert, ensuring no one slipped into unconsciousness from cold or fatigue. She adjusted blankets, coaxed soldiers to eat small bites, and whispered encouragement. Finally, the storm began to abate as the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Alina led the team out, carefully stepping into a landscape transformed by fresh snow and wind-sculpted ice. The plateau, though still treacherous, now appeared navigable. "Stay close, eyes sharp," she instructed. We move, slowly but steadily. The plateau's edge revealed a distant path winding toward a supply cache they had been tracking for days. Relief and determination surged through the team. They had survived the climb, the storm, and frostbite, all because of Alina's unwavering leadership. Yet the mission was not complete. The mountains held more dangers, and their journey was far from over. Hunger, exhaustion, and unseen threats remained, but the team moved forward, inspired and protected by the woman who had gone without food for 3 days to keep them alive. The morning light revealed a treacherous landscape ahead. Slopes that had seemed manageable in the storm now glistened with ice, treacherous as glass, and hidden crevices yawned like traps, ready to swallow the unwary. The team's progress had been slowed to a crawl by fatigue, frostbite, and exhaustion, but Alina refused to stop. Every step counted. Every misstep could cost lives. "Keep tight, everyone," she said, scanning the horizon. "One slip and it's over. Trust me, we'll get through this." Her own body screamed for rest. Hunger clawed at her stomach. Her head throbbed, and every muscle felt like lead. But Alina ignored it. The team's survival depended on her. She took the lead again, steadying a soldier whose boots had lost traction. Behind her, others followed cautiously, their eyes wide with fear and awe at her composure. The path narrowed further as they approached a ridge overlooking a deep ravine. A single misstep would mean a deadly fall. Alina anchored a rope, securing it to a rock, and gestured for the team to clip in. One by one, they traversed the narrow ledge, hands gripping the rope, teeth clenched against the wind. Suddenly, a loud crack split the air. A chunk of ice broke off from the cliff above, plummeting toward the ledge. Instinctively, Alina shoved the closest soldier out of the path while diving herself to the side. The ice smashed against the cliff with a deafening roar, leaving jagged shards scattered across the path. "Everyone okay?" she shouted over the wind. A chorus of shaken affirmatives followed. Her heart raced, but she remained calm, assessing the damage and checking for injuries. None were serious, but the warning was clear. The mountains were still testing them. As they resumed their trek, the team's morale wavered. Soldiers whispered doubts, exhaustion evident in their slurred words. Alina addressed them directly. "You've come this far. You've survived a storm, frostbite, and hunger. One more push. Stay close. Trust yourselves and trust me." Her words carried weight. In the military, morale could mean the difference between life and death, and her unwavering presence kept the team moving despite pain and fear. Hours passed. The plateau ahead appeared in the distance, promising supplies and shelter. Yet the terrain was merciless. Deep snow drifts slowed every step, hidden rocks threatened sprains, and the wind howled like a predator hunting the weak. Alina's vision blurred from fatigue, but she refused to yield. Each soldier relied on her guidance, each life she carried in her decisions. As they climbed the last ridge, a soldier slipped, crashing into the snow. Alina reacted instantly, catching him by the arm and pulling him back to safety. "You're okay," she assured him, her voice steady despite the pounding of her own heart. Finally, they reached the plateau where supplies were rumored to be cached. Relief washed over the team, but Alina remained vigilant. The area was exposed, and she had learned never to trust appearances in the mountains. "Secure the perimeter," she ordered. "We rest, but stay alert." The team moved to follow her instructions, collecting supplies, distributing food and water, and tending to frostbite. Alina, still without nourishment, helped where needed, quietly observing and directing. Her body screamed for calories, yet she continued prioritizing others. Night fell and the wind eased slightly. Soldiers gathered around a small fire, huddled in thermal blankets. Alina finally allowed herself to sit, though she still rationed her own energy. She looked at the team, safe, fed, and alive. Every sacrifice, every step without food, every decision had been worth it, but the mission was not fully over. They still had to navigate the mountains for extraction, and dangers could emerge at any moment. The night was cold, but Alina knew that with careful planning, vigilance, and unyielding determination, the team could survive, and she would make sure they did. The morning brought calm after the storm. Snow glistened under the first rays of sunlight, and the mountains seemed almost serene, masking the dangers that had tested them so harshly. Alina surveyed the area, mapping the safest path for extraction. "Move in pairs," she instructed. "Keep visual contact at all times." We reached the extraction point together. The team set out, every step deliberate, calculated. Alina led, her instincts sharp despite extreme fatigue. Hunger gnawed relentlessly, her muscles screamed for rest, and frostbite pain had worsened overnight. But she pressed on, focusing entirely on the mission and the lives of her team. The extraction point was a small clearing near a hidden ridge. Alina spotted the helicopter approaching, rotors slicing through the cold mountain air. Relief washed over the soldiers, but she remained vigilant, scanning for threats. "In these mountains, danger could appear without warning. Hold positions," she ordered. "Stay low. Keep your eyes open." As the helicopter descended, winds from the rotor kicked up snow, reducing visibility. Alina coordinated with the pilot via radio, guiding the team safely toward the landing zone. Every movement had to be precise. A misstep could mean being swept away or injured. She helped wounded soldiers climb aboard first, ensuring each one was secure. Finally, she turned to assist the remaining team members, then herself. Exhaustion threatened to collapse her. But she moved with purpose, every step calculated, every action deliberate. Once aboard, she slumped against the wall, finally allowing herself to feel the weight of her hunger, fatigue, and pain. But her eyes stayed vigilant, scanning the horizon. The mission was successful, the team alive, and they were on their way to safety. The pilot looked at her, admiration evident. "You didn't eat, did you?" Alina shook her head faintly. Not until everyone was safe. Her sacrifice, endurance, and leadership had ensured the survival of the team. She had gone 3 days without food, led through storms, frostbite, and exhaustion, and kept her team alive against impossible odds. As the helicopter lifted off, the mountains receding beneath them, Alina allowed herself a deep breath. She had done what few could endure. And though her body was depleted, her spirit remained unbroken. The mission was complete. The team was safe, and one woman's courage, selflessness, and unwavering resolve had carried them through what seemed impossible.